Welcome to She Loves the Grid, where we discuss all things F1. Whether it's happening on the track, in the paddock, or beyond the grid, we'll talk about it all.
And here we are. Welcome back. She Loves the Grid. Hello, Diane. This is Claire. Here we are. The Chinese Grand Prix is over after a 5-year break. And as we posted, it did not disappoint.
It didn't, from beginning to end, it did not disappoint. I mean, even with the spontaneous combustion in the grass,
it was on fire.
Yes. I love it. It really did it. And there's a lot to talk about. So
much.
Yay. How was your week?
It's been a little crazy with the move and getting everything packed up here because I've shared, had a house in Florida, going through selling it, and it's crazy, trying to get my son and his wife packed up and moved off to their next adventure. Though I did get a little fun. I spent Tuesday evening at Epcot drinking around the world. And Wednesday we hung out at the Magic Kingdom, which was fun. And then yesterday, Saturday, because we record on Sunday, we had a little going away thing for the kids at one of my favorite places, that little Plant Street Market that you've been to with me before. So that was kind of fun. And then I promptly came home and crashed after a few beers and several nights of insomnia. So,
yeah, that jet lag is no joke. Trying to get back into the swing of the U.S. times, but that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And then I started planning for the time that I'm out to see you for 3 weeks. And all my stand-up meetings for my business are normally at 9 a.m. Eastern. We're moving them back to 9 a.m. Central because that's where my employee will be. And I was like, well, that's 7 a.m. your time. You're up early working it that early. Yeah, I can do that.
Yes. Yes. With the, I don't know, the days getting longer. Now I'm up at like 5:30. So
I won't be up that early.
Yeah. I don't blame you.
Then again, at 5 a.m. for you is what? 2 in the afternoon for me in Germany, right? So it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. How was your week?
Busy as usual. And it's like in the Southwest, it's getting super hot. So trying to make that transition, had to turn the air on midweek and, readjust my days. So hopefully I'm getting stuff done in the morning instead of at night or, in the afternoon. So yeah, here we go. It'll be like this till the end of October. Yay.
Yay, desert. Well, let's get started with this right. Where shall we start?
Okay. Well, one thing I knew when I heard this, I was like, this is going in the podcast. Chatty Cathy is at it again. I feel like we haven't heard a whole lot from Chatty Cathy. And if you don't know, we refer to Helmut Marko of Red Bull as Chatty Cathy because he talks a lot and shares probably things maybe he shouldn't. But he said that Red Bull is definitely in talks with Carlos Sainz, but they can't beat the Audi offer that's on the table. So for sure, there is an offer from Audi, which we've talked about. He's got a lot of connections. Go back last year, we talked about this. He's got a lot of connections with Audi, and I can definitely see him being there. But apparently, they're putting a lot of money towards that, if it's true. Because Helmut's saying Red Bull can't. It's probably more like they won't spend that much money to get him. So the plot thickens.
What do you do for Carlos? Right? Like, what does he do? Audi, kicks over, whatever. They're not. They're just not. And it's not just the car, it's the coordination, the mechanics, the execution. They're just not executing. Even today, it was a 5-point-something second pit stop. Again, we're struggling with those tires and the wheels. Like what does someone Carlos's caliber do, knowing that the team is struggling, or take less money and go to a killer car? Like, that's.
I think it's a hard decision. I think for me, it would have to be kind of more of a long-term decision.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want just a 1 or 2 year contract. And that's probably what Red Bull would probably give him. With Sauber, Audi, like, I think that he could be there long term. We know they already are, setting up the company. They're working on their 2026. I think to a point. I don't know that they're allowed to work on it a lot, but I think that they were doing some sim testing over the winter. So they must have something going. So I think it would really have to be like a long-term decision. Where is he going to be able to drive for a few years? Like, yeah, maybe next year is going to suck in that car, but maybe come 2026 with the new rules. And we talked about last week how they're having issues, or not just that team, but a lot of the teams are having issues with the 2026 in their simulators. It could be, okay, we'll just hold tight and hope that 2026 is good and next year's a wash. Like, not going to be fighting for anything. If it were me, I'd want to go long term. Who am I going to be with long term? Who's going to be the best?
Yeah, that's a good point. And then especially if he is the primary driver and he is the one because he's such a good strategist, and they would listen to him. And it makes me think about Alonso and his venture with Aston Martin. They weren't the best prior to him coming there, and they made a lot of improvements in Canada. But they're doing better this year, and he's staying there. And he said this is something where he wants long term and to finish out and have even beyond driving. So maybe that's a play, which makes sense. You want to get in there and stick it out and see what you can build and grow. And maybe he would even help have some direction, and he might have a little more control and direction to help grow and build the team, and along with strategy.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I'm wondering if these are the only teams, because we've also heard about Mercedes in the mix. I don't think there was a lot of talk from Toto this week about it, but we know there's probably more than these two teams. So he might have other options we are not really sure about. So there's that.
There's that.
But I think the other big thing that came out this week, or midweek before the whole weekend started, was the Taylor Swift Alonso rumor from last year came back when she dropped her new album. And there's an Aston Martin reference in the song. And it talks about, I'm an Aston Martin that you drove into the ditch, and then something about walking away. I've got to listen to the album. But yeah.
And then Aston Martin.
They are classic. First of all, like, it's no surprise that Fernando last year won a TikTok award, right? Like, he will play into anything. He's so willing to go along with it. So if you're on our YouTube channel, you'll see some of the screenshots from the TikTok, and then McLaren's comment to the post. But if you haven't seen it, you don't have TikTok. The song's playing. Fernando comes and sits down. He's looking at an iPad or something. And then he looks at the camera and does a little symbol for putting his finger over his lips, like shh. So, I mean,
this is a 10-second video. It's like 10 seconds. There's nothing to it, and it's just and this has been up a day, and it has 7,800 comments on it already. Look at this, 687,000 likes.
Yeah,
and 35,000 saves, 123,000 shares. This is Sunday, one day after they posted it. It's insane. It's insane. So insane. And I love McLaren's comment. They're just
McLaren is awesome. Advent is awesome. Aston Martin is awesome. I think we all want to know, again, did they go out? Did they go on a few dates, which was the rumor last year? Like, are they both playing with us? he made some videos last year, and then now she's done this, and it's like, did they just decide, we're gonna have this little,
are they just screwing with us?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, they're totally screwing with us.
And Taylor Swift seems like the type that she would just be like, hey, let's have some fun, and would do it just because
Fernando.
I mean, it's great. It's great PR. You're getting more plays and whatnot. But I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's great. But then to add another layer, let's not forget that her current boyfriend, Travis Kelce, is an investor in Alpine. So, like, add another layer.
Crazy.
so fun. Oh, I just love those two. I think
And
they
I
both.
love my Fernando. So.
I love Fernando. He's awesome. I love it. All right, let's talk about this week, but let's start with Zhou because, oh my gosh, this was kind of, I mean, if he had gotten points, it would have been the weekend that we were hoping for him. But I think overall, it wasn't too shabby. There was a lot of things he couldn't control. So oh no, I guess before we talk about Zhou, let's do the other helmets, the special helmets.
Oh, see the helmets. Yeah. Let's do the helmets. I've got those. Let me pull those up for those watching YouTube or want to come to YouTube. Oh my gosh. This is the best. And if you guys aren't watching, I mean, even the commentator said this is the best helmet for the driver's cam.
Which is Alex Albon's panda helmet.
Panda helmet, yeah. And he went out and hung out in the wild with the pandas.
In the wild. He was at a zoo, but yes. It was every time they showed the cockpit view, I was dying because the little mouth and everything and its eyes, like it was perfectly situated. I absolutely love this. And this is pure Alex Albon to me. Like he just why not have some fun? But also look at the detail on it. It looks like the little hairs, around its eyes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like the detail is amazing, but it's adorable.
There was a picture I found when I was looking for pictures of him standing in the garage, or garage, with the helmet on, but the visor was popped open and you can see his face. I'm like, no, that doesn't work. I need the visor down because it looks too cute.
It's so adorable. I absolutely love it. And it really does also show off that My Protein advertising.
Yeah, it really does. It really does.
A lot of focus there. So
it's adorable. It's adorable.
Yeah. Great job, Alex Albon. I love it. Love it. And then we have George. So I love this helmet too. George, and this is George to me, was very thoughtful in how he designed it. It's red. He has the dragon on it because it's the year of the dragon right now. Right to the right and up above the dragon is his number 63 in Chinese. On the back of it, he had his name written in Chinese. And then the tiger, because he was born in the year of the tiger. So there was all these little things, just thoughtfulness put into this helmet that he wanted to include. Last time he raced there, he was a rookie, 2019. I thought it was so nice. I like it.
I do too. It's very classic. It very much makes you think of China too. And it's just it's very, very respectfully done. I really like it.
Very respectfully done. Even when he announced it on the video, he made sure that he said his name properly in Chinese. So he wasn't, just trying. Like he really was so thoughtful about the whole thing, which I love.
He's such a cutie.
Love it. I know. And then we've got Zhou's helmet, which we showed last week. If you did not watch last week, it's the metro system map, if you will, with Shanghai landmarks. And there's a little picture of little Zhou at the very first Grand Prix on the back of it. I did listen to a podcast with Zhou this week, and it was Beyond the Grid. And they asked, so they must have done this sometime maybe after Australia, but before the Japanese Grand Prix. And they asked, are you going to have a special helmet? And he said, of course. And he said, but it's probably not going to be what anybody thinks. And he said he had a feeling that other drivers would use red, would use the dragon. And we all know one of the things I love about Zhou is he is a fashion guy. And he said, I have my own style. I like things, to be their own way. And so that's why he did something more like this. So I thought, yeah, that is Zhou 100%. Like just classic, clean, different than what everybody else is doing.
My favorite part, I love the colors, but my absolute favorite part was including him as a kid at the first GP there. That has got to be my favorite part. I love the homage to all the landmarks and the metro system and all of that, but that is by far my favorite part of the whole helmet.
He's so cute. He's just so cute.
And it was such a meaningful race to have coming from there, being the first Chinese driver to drive in a Chinese Grand Prix.
Yes.
it was 20 years ago that it was the first race there, and then we had a 5-year hiatus, and to be able to be racing, to be there, and to be able to those fans, and I think we talked about it, that the last race there, they were not a lot of people there, and there were tricks of the camera and things that they did to make it look a little more full, and it was a sold out crowd.
It
They,
was
Zhou is who brought them there. I mean, other things too,
yes.
but Zhou was the draw. I love that
No.
they had his own custom park for me at the end.
Yeah. And you could hear it every time he came on track. Every time, he qualified. They were so loud. It was all for Joe. All of it. I think that
I
had to
should
have
go to
been
those pictures.
so amazing. But yeah, absolutely a weekend to remember for Joe. This was after the race ended and he came out of the garage to thank the fans and they were going nuts and he just became very emotional. I was totally tearing up. Especially because listening to that podcast yesterday, and I highly recommend going and listening to it. He was talking about how much he gave up, his family gave up to be a part of motorsport, even once he's done racing. He wants to help Chinese drivers get more experience and get into the sport because he really had to give up everything and move to England. I think when he was 15,
Yeah, I
but
was young.
just so much that he wants to give back and you could hear it and he kept saying it over and over. And so I think after the race today, it just all hit him. And he didn't have a bad weekend. Like he made it through in sprint qualifying. That was incredible, right? Like he did make it through in the sprint qualifying, right? Yeah, he did make it through. And they were kind of, I think, waiting. The crowd was kind of waiting because I think that was when the grass started on fire again. And so it was like, wait, did the flag go? Did we get the checkered flag or did the time run out? And when they said yes, like everybody cheered, like absolutely loved it. And then he made it through to SQ3. So the crowd was going nuts. Like, how exciting is that? Like, you're home and you're racing. You have 1 hour of practice. You're straight into sprint qualifying and you make it all the way to SQ3. Like, so exciting.
So
And
exciting.
then, I mean, the sprint race, like, I don't know. He finished 9th. So he was just outside the points because in the sprint, the points only go to 8th place. So he was so close. I mean, well, not like so close because he was like 6 seconds back, but like of George. But still, like you're so close. I was just happy for him. Like he was up there, right? He was up there and doing it. And then, qualifying, he was out though in Q1 for regular qualifying.
Just barely. I mean, he was
Just
P16.
there.
Just barely.
Just
But so much else could have gone wrong, though. I mean, that they've had that car not, DNF. They've had issues with it. There's just, and with any F1 car, there's so many things that could have gone wrong. I mean, with the craziness that we saw after the safety car,
yeah.
released, and even today's race, there's
Well,
so much that could have gone wrong, and he could have just not finished. So be able
right.
to finish both, to be able to do it completely for the fans and for China, that was awesome.
Yeah. He did. I think he did get hit by Yuki at the very beginning of the race. So not at the restarts, but at the very beginning. And he thought that he might have damage to the floor. And I think that is what kind of sent him to the back because he was very quickly like
Yeah, and
right.
toward the end, the last couple of laps, that something flew off his car. There's a
Yeah.
piece that broke off and flew off his car. I was
Yeah.
wondering
I
if
think,
that's the debris that Max called out about running over some debris on the last laps.
oh, I don't know. I did see that pop off when he was racing with Magnussen. And I think even before that, it was like flapping in the wind. But I mean, every time he came around, like the crowd was nuts. And I mean, they honestly at the beginning, I was like, ooh, we had like a 3-second pit stop. Like, yay, good job. And then it was 5.3. But then they came back on the last pit stop for him and it was 3.2. So like we're getting there. But overall, I just think that the whole weekend meant so much to him and it could have been better, but I think that what happens with the Stake F1 team, previously Alfa Romeo, the car's not reliable. Your pit stops are not reliable. Like, you have issues that are no fault of your own. When we think about, if Yuki did bump him or create damage at the start of the race, like, there's nothing he can do about that. There just isn't. And poor Bottas, who had an amazing weekend for the most part. He looked so strong all weekend, made it to Q3, was 10th on the grid today, and he's going along really well. And the engine just dies on him. It just dies. You cannot do anything when your car's not reliable, when other people are causing you problems. And this is what worries me. And again, we talked about this last week, so I won't go, or 2 weeks ago, whenever we talked about it, where I'm worried that Zhou might not get a seat next year. And I don't think that it's about his driving. The car over the last 2 years and into this year has not been reliable. He can't do anything with that. It's a crappy car. Nobody even remembers they're there. And I think this year of all years, they've had opportunities and then things just happen. So I feel terrible for him, just in general. But I think for the weekend, it clearly meant a lot to him. It meant a lot to the fans. And I'm so happy that, like you said, he was able to cross the finish line, and, he did well as he could have with that car. So
I loved his little personal park for me, and seeing his family there and everything. It was great.
Yes, I know. It was awesome. But you know what? Here's the thing. Is anybody going to do anything about Red Bull? Can anybody do anything about Red Bull?
I've honestly, with me being down to just my laptop right now, I can't look at the notes at the same time. But when you say that, the thing that pops up to me was one of the commentators said, and so I love it when a commentator validates what I'm thinking.
It is a good feeling.
But it was during the sprint qualifying when they deleted Lando's lap time. And then they gave it back. And when the commentator said they didn't delete Max immediately, and Max had the same thing where he had track limits, lost that lap time, and then came back and had a good lap time. Didn't exceed track limits on that one. Lando did the same thing, but they deleted his second lap. They did the exact same thing. They immediately delete Lando's, and they're like, oh, we went back and went, never mind, we don't need to. But they didn't immediately delete Max.
Yeah. It's interesting.
And so when the commentators point that out, you're like, it's just a little on the shady side there. And it didn't help him not much, because he would have only been P3 if Lando's hadn't been reinstated, so he was P4. But, what can we do about Red Bull? It just seems a little... I might have a little pleasure, not that I do feel bad about Danny and Yuki horribly, but I might have a little pleasure in the fact that their second team didn't get any points this weekend.
I know. Well, let me just finish with Red Bull real quick, in that I don't think anybody's going to be able to do anything. You have to hope that something happens like what happened to Max in Australia and his car breaks, and that's why now we have a race. Because during the sprint race, when he didn't lead the whole thing, and it's only 19 laps long, because he had a 13-second lead in that sprint, they were trying different things out, like on the steering wheel, like trying different maneuver. I want to say maneuvers. I don't know what the right word is, but because they could, because they had time, because he was 13 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton. And they're like, well, let's just use this as a practice and let's try some things. When a team is doing that, I don't think you're going to catch them, because the other teams are just trying to catch up. They don't have time to be trying little things while they're racing. To me, that kind of said it all. And when they locked out the front row, I was like, well, here we go. They did it. And then today during the race, they had, like, I just thought they're unbeatable. When they did the double stack twice, but the first time they did it, they didn't really need to come in, but they double stacked it. Max 2.1, Checo 2.0. They're in and out of the pits, from the drivers down to the mechanics. They are firing on all cylinders. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, I think we were talking, I was telling you or my partner this, or maybe both, but you see how well, it was you and I talked about this, how well Lando's doing. And if Lando were in the second seat there in that car, I think he'd give Max run for his money.
Yeah.
Because look, he did beat out Checo. Checo started P2.
Yes.
But Lando beat him. So, and Checo's in that same car. So they're not, I mean, there's a combination, as we've talked about, which is so great about F1. It's the car, it's the strategy, and the driver. So it does require all three. And then you have all these outside forces that can impact it too, weather, other drivers, everything else. But I think it's interesting that Lando was able to get ahead and pretty, I think he ended up, it's 3 to 4 seconds ahead, and Checo could never get his pace back. And then the commentators were talking about that. It's like, we don't see him being able to catch up. In fact, Lando was pulling away. Yeah. So what's the difference? Is it just not tuned right? Is it, back to conspiracy that they just don't give Checo the best car? Or is it driver and car and all of that? So what is it? Because to me, it'd have to be Red Bull 1-2 all the time in the races for it to be that dominant of a car, because it is a very dominant car. But there's the driver, there's the strategy, there's still, or they have just completely different configurations in their car, so much so that Max is way better. His car is just way better.
I think Max just, he pulls away and nobody else can keep up. I mean, the difference between Max and Lando, how many seconds was it?
I'm looking.
It was a decent amount. And if Checo can't get past Lando, then
13.7 seconds.
I was going to say,
and Checo dropped to 5.5 seconds behind, so he lost time, because at one point he was 3.5 seconds. But he ended at 5.5 seconds behind Lando.
He knew. Yeah, probably he knew he wasn't going to get Lando, so just manage the tires, get across the line. Just do it. But I mean, let's talk about Lando, because he had a high and low the whole weekend for everybody. All the teams was highs and lows, right? He's on pole. I was dying during the qualifying because, insane how that was working out. And when Lando, they reinstated his time, I was like, oh my gosh. And he's on pole, and then the sprint starts, and it's like,
what happened? Just
Hamilton. Here's the thing, we talked about what that first turn was like. It's so long and it comes around this way. As they were going around that turn, I was like, when does it end? And I thought, oh, wait a second. It doesn't. It goes all the way around. And then, it doesn't end. And he just couldn't do anything. I don't think that Hamilton pushed him off. I don't think Hamilton was that close to the edge that he was pushing Lando off. Maybe I'll have to go back and watch it. I don't know. Somebody commented on one of our videos and was like, Hamilton's such a selfish driver. He knows that Lando's never won a race. And I'm like, I mean, they're athletes. Of course.
Look, I will say, I personally sometimes think in my head, give a little leeway to Zhou because it's a Chinese race, but they're competitors. They're not going to do that. This isn't a Hallmark movie. This is not, we're going to go out and do this for this person because we feel it's the right thing. No, they're still competing. They're still competing for points, because more points means more money in their pocket at the end of the day.
Exactly. And I mean, okay, take away the athletic side of it and the competitive side of it, but it's the first turn of the first lap. Hamilton got passed by Max. Why? So that if he was oh, sure, Lando, you go, that now Hamilton's in third. None of it makes any sense. And I just felt so bad for Lando, because as we talked about last week, we know he's an overthinker. He's constantly thinking, and it just seems like he gets this stuff and then it slips out of his grasp every time. So I can't even imagine what he was feeling at that moment. And I think he ended up 8, 6, 7.
Well, and it was interesting too, because even he just, it seemed to just get him where he was just like, and I had to, it's just not going to be a good week. He was 6th.
Yeah. Okay. 6th. Yeah. That, which is
and the sprint. Yeah. And then he's like, even when they were interviewing him today after the race, when he did really well in the race, and he's like, well, I just didn't know how the weekend's gonna go. I wasn't really feeling it. I was really surprised. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, you were a great race car driver. You were
Yes.
phenomenal. Like, and
They
he's just so,
I know. I think that overall, like, they were quiet. And you and I
mm,
had kind of talked about that, where, you know, then they go and they qualify ahead of both of the Ferraris. They're looking good. Lando was in first, running a good race today, while Max went into the pits. And then he just chilled in second. And it was like awesome. And poor Oscar, he had damage after, with the whole thing, which we'll talk about here in a second, with Ricardo and Fernando and Lance Stroll. But so he kind of was back, right? I think he finished 8th, but he was not going to be competitive. But it was so cute at the end when Lando was like, "Oh, I packed early. I was ready to go," which he flew back with Max, by the way. They took a picture of themselves on the jet. But he's like, "I didn't think that we'd be ahead of the Ferraris. Like, I didn't think I'd be on the podium. So I was ready to go." So I think they're just quietly, and I feel like we've said this more than once this year, quietly doing their thing,
yeah,
getting those points, doing what it is, and Lando back on the podium today. I love that. Love that for him. But let's talk about the other huge story. Oh, so first of all, Daniel, again, highs and lows. I think that's what we're going to have to call this episode is
yeah,
highs and
yeah.
lows. Highs and lows. So throughout the sprint, qualifyings, all that good stuff, Daniel was beating Yuki. So Daniel had a new chassis this week, and he had, I guess, been saying like there was something wrong with his old chassis. They said, if I remember correctly, that they always plan to give the third chassis to Daniel at this race. It did seem to be working because he was outperforming Yuki all weekend. Okay. Everything's looking good, right? Yeah. Then we have a restart. And freaking Stroll, being the menace that he can be in races, goes right up underneath Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah, and I watched it again today over and over because I watched it late and I went back and just kept watching this over and over. So they're on the restart from the safety car because the safety car from Botas, engine dying. And their green flag is going, everybody's off. Fernando has a 3-wheel lockup on those softs.
Yeah.
And everybody's so close because of them being under a full safety car. I think Russell's behind him, so Russell brakes, and then who was behind Russell? Who was behind Oscar? So he brakes, and then Danny brakes and Danny was even closer. So Danny was super close to Oscar, and Oscar wasn't as close to Russell, and Russell wasn't as close to. So by the time they get to Danny, he was super close. But you see on Lance's onboard, his head is turned. So he is not straight ahead in that tight formation. His head is just slightly turned. And that's why there was speculation that he was looking at the apex and not here.
Yes.
Yeah. And then right up underneath, and you see Danny's car go up. But how Danny did not hit Oscar, I have no idea, because he kind of went up underneath, but not enough to touch him. And yeah.
But I think that is where Oscar did sustain some damage, but it could have been way, way worse. And it makes so much sense that you say like Lance's head was turned, because even after he hit Daniel, and if you go to our Instagram, I have a slow-mo video of it, and you can see like it's going right past, and the rear end is up like this. But then Lance totally kind of takes the turn. Like he doesn't give a flying, what, and what happened to Daniel, and he takes the turn and takes a spot. It's like, what is happening?
Well, and Danny suffered damage there, and shortly thereafter,
Yes,
before I show these, because we've got some quotes, shortly right after that, from the fallout of that, I think it was Magnussen runs right into the side of Yuki.
Yeah.
And so Magnussen gets a damage. Yuki just blows out that tire, and then we're right back into another safety car because Yuki's off. So, and then not long after, a few laps later, I think it was a while, but finally Danny started suffering the ill effects of it.
Yeah.
But
He
here,
had no rear grip at that point for Daniel. I felt so bad for Yuki also. Like, he's just going about it. Wasn't the best weekend for him overall, but he's just going about his business, and K-Mag ruins. So both cars DNF. So
here's
again,
the
here's the quote.
drama.
Here's the drama. So as it's happening, Stroll on his radio says, "This idiot just slammed on the brake. Check for wing damage." So Daniel, after he's out of the car and everything, he does some interviews, and they get progressively more angry if you watch all of them. First, he's like, "I don't know what was happening," da da da, and then another reporter tells him that Lance said it was his fault, and he said, "Well, I had calmed down, and now I'm back to being angry again." And he's looking around the paddock, like, I don't know, he thought Lance was going to be around someplace, and he's looking around the paddock again. Then we get the full quote, which I think happened with a different reporter. Do you want to read it, Claire?
Sure. This is so I'll read it. I got this from Sports Illustrated. So apparently I am the idiot here, and it was my fault. I'm really trying my best not to say what I want to say, but F that guy. Ricardo said in a heated moment post-incident, as quoted by motorsport-total.com. And then back to the quote, "If he watches it again in an hour, he will blame himself. But if not, I can't help him."
Yes. And like you, Daniel also told a reporter, "I watched Lance's onboard. You can see he's not looking at me. He's not looking forward. He's looking, like you said, at the turn." And oh my gosh, I'm sure Lance probably got himself out of there as quickly as he could, because if I were Daniel, I would have been looking to have words. I get it. It's in the heat of the moment. Lance clearly did not know what happened because he was watching something else. He was watching the Apex. But dude, I understand. Like, people will say, "Oh, that idiot, that idiot." I hope there's an apology someplace I haven't seen yet, because I've been busy painting the trim on my garage today. But I mean, Lance, dude.
Well, and what gets me on this one, and is that, Danny ended up with a penalty, and for some, I forget what. But because he couldn't, he had a 10-second penalty assessed in the race, and because he retired the car before he served the penalty, the stewards have come back and said, "Well, you didn't serve your penalty, so now you have a 3-grid place penalty for Miami." So he's already starting 3 places behind in Miami, and even with the new chassis and all that, if he's doing well, he's still not going to be way up. And now he's already starting three places back. And I'm assuming that's going to be in the main race and not in the sprint race. So,
right. Yeah, it would be the main race and not the sprint for Miami.
Yeah, so that's stuff. And you and I were talking about. Yeah, you and I were talking about. I don't understand, unless the car was not safe conditions, why they didn't do like they did Perez last year, where they just said, "Well, let's serve the penalty, go out, do one more lap, and then retire the car," because then that way he's going to retire the car anyway. Might as well just serve the penalty and get it over with, and then do that. So you didn't face it. I mean, they did it for Perez last year. I don't understand why they didn't do that.
I said the same, and I think I want to go back and find out when they were notified of the penalty, if that came afterwards, or if that, because I was trying to remember. I don't think I had noted it during the race. But I mean, like you said, last year, Perez was out of his car for like a half an hour, 40 minutes or something like that, got back in the car, went back out, came around, did a lap, came in, served his penalty, went back, did one more, and then retired, because they didn't want to serve the 3-place grid drop in the next race. So I agree with you. Like, depending on when they found out, put him back in the car.
Yeah, and it was all part of during the safety car. It was because K-Mag had gone past him, and then he went past K-Mag, and he said he thought because K-Mag went past him that he could go back. I'm like, no, K-Mag could because of rule, I think it was like 55.8 or something like that,
Yeah.
but Danny could not. And yeah, so there was, but yeah, like you said, I don't know when they actually notified him. I had to go look at the play-by-play and the report to see was it
Yeah.
before he retired the car.
I wonder if they did it afterwards, like they would note, because if he went to the stewards, a lot of times they do that after the race. Like they noted it, we're gonna review it afterwards, and maybe that's where they gave it to him. I don't.
It'd be interesting. Then there would have been, I mean, it would have just added 10 seconds, but since he didn't finish,
That
yeah,
stinks. Oh, that stinks.
it
Well,
stinks.
let's talk about like going back to the highs and lows and Lance. Like definitely for Aston Martin. So when they brought upgrades to Japan, it definitely seemed to work, right? Like for Fernando. I don't think that that Lance has figured it out.
No.
The upgrades yet because he was qualifying below Fernando. Like today, awful. He wasn't even just a menace in that situation. I think he was a menace in other situations today on track. Like, ugh, it's so annoying. And then when he was told about the 10-second penalty, he said on his radio to his engineer, "Unbelievable, man. Such a joke." Dude, he has no self-awareness sometimes. I literally don't think that he has any self-awareness at times, for sure. I don't know. It's ridiculous. But Fernando, on the other hand, holy moly, qualifies
I
third in
think
the race today. Like,
I think if they chose the wrong tire strategy. If they did not choose that strategy, I
yeah.
think there's a good chance that he would have been on podium. I mean,
Are you
to
saying the
come
tire
back,
strategy when he went to the softs during the
yeah,
safety
yeah,
car? Yeah, that was
yeah.
weird. He was the only one on softs.
I know, and then
And he was,
because it forced him to do yet another tire change. But that
yeah.
tire change, oh my gosh, he went from 12th to 7th. I mean, he was just
Oh,
blowing past everybody.
I
It,
totally want to talk about that. But talking about tires, did you notice all the marbling on the track? Why would you put him on softs when the whole track, the only area that doesn't have bits of like balls of like the tire stuff that's falling off is basically the driving line because it's
yeah,
but the whole track was littered with it. Why would you do that?
I don't know. Again, if it weren't for that, and again, strategy, car, driver, like it's the
Yeah.
three. And if one is off, and I think today the strategy was off for Fernando. Had they not done that, had they kept to a more standard tire strategy, because they had to do 2 compounds,
Yep.
that was the rules. But if they just stuck it out and he didn't have that extra pit stop, that extra tire change,
Yeah.
I mean, that car has the pace, that car has the speed, and he is driving it. I mean, he is driving it hard. I mean, he got on those mediums at the end, and he was just blowing them away.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
from 12th to 7th, and give him a few more laps, he would have gotten again. He would have
Yeah.
gotten higher. I mean,
I think,
he just was on it and just
oh my God.
showing the master at passing, the master at just driving that car.
It was insane. But my heart like dropped when his back end hit that gravel where signs went
I
out.
know.
I was like, no. And then it was like, Fernando, we know he's a master, rights the car, and then passes Hamilton. I was like, this guy, I mean, what? He's 43 and I mean, I don't really care. Nowadays, they're athletes all the way through. But I was like, how in the world? I think the high and low for him is that he started in third and he finished in 7th. Yes,
Yeah.
it was an awesome comeback, but he still went backwards. But
But
Lance still
he got
finished.
fastest lap of the day.
He did? I did not know
He did.
that.
He got fastest lap on that last set of
Oh,
tires. He pulled fastest lap, so he got the extra point.
I did not know that.
Yes.
What?
Fernando got the
Oh my
DHL fastest lap
gosh.
of the world. Yep.
That's amazing. I don't think I realized that. I was trying to think like, did I have any notes about the sprint race with Fernando? I don't think I did. Oh, I did say at one point, so Fernando was backing up everybody behind Lewis in the sprint race because he couldn't keep up even with Lewis at that point. I don't know. But then he had to pull out. That was the weird thing.
Yeah,
Is
he couldn't finish.
towards the end, he got that puncture and he could not finish. That was kind of weird. I was like, what?
Yeah, that was kind of a bummer.
Let's talk real quick about Ferrari, because
they were just kind of, that was kind of like the "you're just not really here" team this week.
Yeah.
There wasn't much.
I agree. I felt like, I've said this before about Carlos. Like, you can tell when he's comfortable at a track and when he isn't. And I guess historically he's not been done great at this track, but I just didn't feel like I saw, well, I can't really say that because in the sprint race, and even during sprint qualifying, like, I don't know. There just seemed to be times where he was hesitant, but I will tell you was it the sprint qualifying where he hit that gravel? Or was it regular qualifying? Oh my gosh.
I can't even remember.
Okay, no, it was regular qualifying. I start to like blend when there's all this stuff going on. So regular qualifying, Q2, he hits that gravel. He goes wide on the last turn, hits the gravel, goes across the track, and that's when the red flag came out, right? So I was like, you know what? Even though this is not good, Carlos is showing other teams why he should have a seat someplace else, even with this error, right? Because he purposely turned the car when it was going back across the track so that it hit the side and it saved the rear, which was probably what was going to hit the barrier. Save the rear, which is where all the really important stuff is. I think it obviously clipped the nose, it clipped the front wing because he did have that replaced, but he was able to minimize the damage. And I'm like, this is again somebody who strategy thinking, he's always on it. He seems to be like second nature with that kind of stuff. And I don't know, maybe another driver would have done the same, but I was just like, okay, even in this situation that is not awesome, he is showing another team, I'm a thinking driver. I can minimize damage in this type of a situation. He got the car going again, went back, even with the nose was broken, the front ring was totally gone, got it back, everything was doing good, gets back out on track and ends up in P2 for Q2. Like, what? That is insane. Like, absolutely insane that he was able to do that. Now, here is something. Aston Martin, after the after qualifying, filed a protest. I feel like this is one thing they're known for doing. They did it, I think it was Austin last year when one of the tracks where everybody was going off and having the track limit violations, and there was some stuff that came from that, but they were turned down. So there was a rule that says if your car is stopped or deemed to be stopped during qualifying, you cannot continue. And Aston Martin said Ferrari broke that by putting him back out there. And the steward said, no, it's fine, which I think it should be fine. Like, it totally should be fine. But I thought that was really smart of him. But overall, I think both Ferraris had a hard time getting past people. They just were kind of And Charles said after the race, they did not realize how bad their car was going to be on those hard tires.
Yeah, and Carlos had mentioned something too about the hard tires. Interestingly enough, they finished 4th and 5th in both races.
Oh, in the sprint and this one?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I forgot where they finished in the sprint.
Charles 4th and Carlos 5th. Carlos was like 3 seconds behind in the sprint, and then he was 10 seconds behind in the race.
Okay. And we know 2 of those cars in front of them are Red Bulls. So it was just the McLaren. And so, I mean, maybe they're not as bad, but it just did not seem like a great, fun, exciting weekend for Ferrari. Boo.
It's interesting to not have as much excitement for them, but still be 4th and 5th,
I know. Yeah, I guess this year we are just expecting a lot more. Charles definitely did outperform Carlos for sure. that's the first time I think this year that that's happened.
It is.
But, and now Carlos doesn't have 100% podium record anymore. Boo.
Bummer.
But you know what I missed, which we haven't really heard this year? Plan D from the strategy team. It's the first time this year we've gone from B to D. And I think both drivers questioned it because I think Carlos said something about like, are we sure about that? Because again, Carlos always thinking. And then Charles asked the same thing. And Javi's like, both drivers are on plan D, we believe. And I'm like, I mean, where's the confidence? There's just no confidence. But it's our first introduction to plan D this year for Ferrari. Who else? Ooh, Mercedes.
The only thing there is we talked about this too, is that the commentators, just like Lewis, is that he's either having a good weekend or a bad weekend, and if it's a bad weekend, he's 100% negative like the whole time. And they said that in the middle of the race when he was talking about he didn't have any traction or it was shaking. I forget what he was talking about, commenting. They're like, if he starts having issues, he ends up typically being negative like the entire weekend.
Yeah,
which he ended up.
He started on second in the sprint race and finished second. Like that was awesome. He was really giving it a go. So, I mean, I feel like it kind of started not too bad, and then today, I mean, then you have qualifying and he is 18th out of 20 cars. Horrible. Don't really remember what happened there because these sprint weekends are long and I can't remember everything. And then he starts today 18th and he ends up in
9th, I think.
8th or 9th. Okay. So like you still come 9 or 10 places. Like
yes, it was going to be 10 places until Fernando passed him.
Oh, right.
Okay. 9 places. Yeah. He was an 8th until Fernando pushed him back one.
But he made up a lot of ground. He made up a lot of ground. And even yesterday in the press conference after qualifying, he was like, well, tomorrow's a new day and it will be a lot of fun. And I know. I'm like, I know what he meant. But he was talking about he was going to have to move up through the field, right? And like he doesn't have a whole lot of opportunities to do that kind of racing usually. So, and he did that. So not horrible. But George is still outperforming him for the most part. Maybe not this weekend, but like in the race he did for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, because George got 6th.
Yeah. George holds everybody up. Like it's hard to get past him. The Ferraris had a hard time getting past him initially. Like he just holds everybody up. I don't even remember what else he did this weekend. Anything that
he got 8th in the sprint.
Okay. That last point. He got that last point. He's hanging in there. Hey, but you know what? The Alpines, they're not looking too bad. Ocon, I think, had the upgrade, and supposedly, maybe, possibly, is what I'm hearing. Pierre will have that. Highs and lows, though, again, right? Like Ocon, not too bad. Both cars made it into Q2 or SQ2. I don't even remember. One of those. Not awful. Like
but they finished 11th and 13th, and if Gasly did not have the upgrade, and he's only 2 behind.
Yes. So they finished the highest that they have all year. Pierre in practice, was it practice? Not happy at all. Practice or sprint qualifying. He was not happy. I think it was practice. Yeah. He was like, I learned absolutely nothing out there. This is a waste of time. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. Poor Alpine once again. But they did pretty good. It's like, ooh, are we getting someplace? Are we maybe kind of sort of? I don't know. But Pierre's 19.3 second pit stop really did not help his situation. So if you added that, okay, how far ahead was Ocon from Pierre?
He only finished 7 seconds, like 6.5 seconds. So he's only 6.5 seconds ahead of Gasly. So there's a
ahead of him if he did not have that issue with the pit stop. Oh my goodness. That was scary though. I felt really bad for the mechanic. He's good. If you didn't see it, Pierre pulled in, the car fell off the jack.
With only 3 wheels on. It's only 3
with
tires
3 wheels on it. Yeah. The rear right, the mechanic's holding the tire's not even on the car. The car slips off the jack, Mechanic kind of goes backwards. Those huge tires, heavy tires. Pierre is on the radio like, is he okay? Mechanic is okay. But yeah, 19.3 seconds will definitely put you behind your teammate when you're that close. But maybe
and he was only 2 more seconds behind 10th. So I mean, without that, there's a chance he could have been in the points. So close to points.
Well, we'll see how they are in Miami, but maybe they're making some headway. Williams, maybe not. I don't know. I thought they were 11th and 13th.
Sargent was doing really well, and then all of a sudden he just starts falling back. Plus, he had to serve a 10-second penalty, which didn't help. But he ended up 17th last again, and Albon was 12th.
Oh, boo. Well, yeah. So the pit lane thing where Logan got his 10 seconds penalty seems a little ticky-tacky, if you ask me. So it was virtual safety car, correct? I think at that time.
Yeah.
And I think it was Nico was coming out of the pits. Sargent's coming on the track, and there's a line, and it's like minuscule that they decided that Logan
George even said fractional. When they looked in the video, they had to look at the video and it was fractional. The naked eye, like you said, the naked eye could not see it. And even Logan's like, I thought I was ahead. And he's at a faster pace at that point too.
Yeah.
He thought he was ahead. Like,
yeah. He could Logan. It's a mixture of things, but I think at times when he needs some luck to go his way, it doesn't.
That's his high low. He was doing so well, I think, for him until that point. He was at a high, and then the 10-second penalty hit him, and then it caked him after that.
Yeah. Albon was also noted for pushing Pierre off the track, but I don't think I ever heard anything about that afterwards.
No further action.
Okay. There we go. Pierre was not happy. That was another poor issue for Pierre. Like, he just did not have, he was not happy. But let's talk about Hülkenberg and Haas, because Hülkenberg, once again, is like putting that car in qualifying and the sprint qualifying, if I remember correctly, places maybe we didn't think it would necessarily be.
Yeah, he had it. He was then sprint qualifying, the sprint grid, they were 12th and 13th. K-Mag 12th, Hülkenberg 13th.
Okay.
And then in the starting grid for the race, Hülkenberg was 9th.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I will say this about K-Mag. I love towards the end when he was really giving it to Stroll. Like, I love that K-Mag that's like, you're not going to pass me. I feel like that's how I drive sometimes, but it's like, you're not going to get past me. And he can defend, and he will defend. He doesn't care who you are. He doesn't care which car you are. If he needs to defend his position, he's going to. And he was really taking it to Stroll for a while. And it was awesome. Like, the back and forth and the wheel to wheel action, like, I was like, go K-Mag. Like, that.
Well, then Haas got a point because Hülkenberg got 10th, so that was good.
Oh, that's true. That's our very first point.
Mm-hmm.
Yay! Well, let's put up the points. I feel like we talked about pretty much everybody.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to read, but
Red Bull is extending that constructor lead. They're at 195 with Ferrari 151.
Yeah. And Mercedes or McLaren's with 96.
Yeah.
They're pretty far up there. But then you've got Mercedes and Aston Martin. They're not too far off. Is it 12 points apart?
Yeah.
But Haas and VCAR 5 and 7. And then you still have 3 with 0 points, man. Williams, Alpine, and Kick Sauber. And I think it's interesting based on how they perform. They still average out the order of the points, the teams without any points. So, Williams is not last right now because of just how they've been performing versus Kick Sauber is dead last.
Yeah. Very interesting. Oh, and I misspoke. Haas does have 5 points. I was thinking this was their first points, but it is not their first point. So that is, Williams, Alpine, and Kick Sauber. Wow. Ugh, poor guys. Max is extending his lead, though, in the driver standings. he's got 110 with Sergio now at 85. Charles 76. Carlos, again, the last few years, hot on his tail. Those two go back and forth. He's got 69. And then Lando with 58. So there's a nice little contest in there for third. But Max is extending that lead.
Very much so. Very much so. I think it's interesting with Charles and Carlos had a better weekend and not been behind Charles on both races. I think they would be a little close. Mathematically, they would be a little bit closer.
Well, don't forget though that Carlos missed an entire race. So
exactly. Could you imagine he hadn't missed an entire race? So that's him that close with one race completely out.
Yeah, completely out. And Ollie Behrman is still, I think, ranked like 12th out of 20 drivers, 21 drivers, because we got to count Ollie. But yeah, craziness. So, the Chinese Grand Prix, all the emotions, all the drama, everything.
Lots of highs, lots of lows. It was a fun one. It was an absolute fun one.
It really was.
And now we have a week off, right?
Yep, we have a week off, and then we go to Miami. So,
and we did not win any trips there.
Oh, we tried to win trips to Miami, but you know what? We have other plans. So, it'll be fine. It's all good.
It's all good. Well, one more off week. Let's see what kind of craziness happens between now and then. And it's been a fun ride.
I know. Maybe there'll be a fight between Lance and Daniel. I don't know. We'll see. War of words online. I want to see it. I hope Lance is apologized. We'll see. All right, that's it.
That's it. Thanks all. We'll see you guys in a week.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and a review. To stay up to date with She Loves the Grid and get all the behind the scenes content, you can follow us on Instagram at She Loves the Grid and on Facebook at facebook.com/She Loves the Grid. Thank you for joining us for the ride this week.